Hello from your favorite Grasslands PR team. This week we're back with another reason why these overlooked and underappreciated ecosystems are objectively the best biome. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Rachel.
And I'm a guest.
What's your name, guest?
My name's Allan.
Oh, wow.
Allan. Allan is an old friend of us, a friend of the podcast, biologist, wildlife person, educator,
Nerd.
Nerd, yep. Plays an exquisite Strad von Zarovich in our D&D campaign.
It's true.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so happy to have you here.
I'm really thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it is the best kind of guest work, in my opinion. I'm not the guest, so it's like, this sucks. But if I had to be a guest on something, I'd want to be like, yes, I just want to be there.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, I like to learn about a thing, and I think I'm about to. So
Probably. Hopefully you learn at least one new thing. I don't know if that's possible. But full disclosure, we did attempt to record this at least one other time. I don't know why I said it like that. We tried to record it once before. only actually saved 3 minutes of it. So we are on our second attempt at recording this episode today. And I'm gonna do my best to keep it fresh, but we'll see what happens.
yeah. No, I mean, I promise you, I legitimately forgot 95% of the things I learned in the first recording. So this is going to be a brand new topic for me.
Awesome. Do you remember bird streamers? God damn it. Okay.
I do, but I am not going to spoil it for the dear listener.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe we can just describe our thought process. Anyway, it is my turn for an episode. We are kicking off a brand new season of The Best Biome, where we're excited to have more guests like our dear friend Allan on the podcast with us. I guess we do have some news that's semi-big in the wildlife world, which is the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. As we've probably mentioned before, multiple iterations have been attempted to pass, but it did just make it out of the House committee that it was on. So it was, I don't remember the numbers, 29 to 17 or something good like that. I don't know. Anyway, the important thing to note here is that it is making progress, which is not always the case, not only for bills like this, but for this specific bill and its previous iterations. So, yeah, go Recovering.
Very nice.
Hopefully we see some good progress on that.
Who would vote against that? 17 people.
17 people.
Ugh. All right. That's
I
fine.
know. Yeah. I was going to launch into a discussion about why people might oppose that, but it's probably not even worth, because, there have been concerns brought up and they've been addressed, and that's why it's passed now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Anyway, so my episode, we are going to be talking about a bird, because, how else would I launch another, wow, I can't do words anymore. Why else? What?
You got this.
What else would you expect of me kicking off another season? It's going to be a bird. It is, by some accounts, the worst bird. But
it's
I'm here.
Objectively not the worst bird.
It is objectively not the worst bird, and I'm here to make an argument for why that is a false statement.
Yes.
So everybody, especially Australians who have said that before about this poor bird, you are incorrect. Yeah, we're talking about a grassland Ibis.
Woo. Beautiful.
Thank you. The Ibis, renowned bird of water.
It is. That's what I always call it.
And trash cans.
And trash cans.
Trash cans, garbage islands, ruining picnics, going on bingers, depending on where you live, possibly also sacred.
It is.
It is. Allan taught me that the etymology of its family name is
Sacred bird.
sacred bird.
Thresky. Wait.
Threskiornithidae?
Yes. Threskiornithidae. Yeah.
Yes.
Sacred
Something
bird.
like that. One of those is
Yeah.
right.
I think that's because of primarily because of its Egyptian connection, the ancient Egyptian significance. Because
Yeah.
they found I would think like thousands of like mummified ibises in
Oh yeah.
archaeological sites.
Yeah. I think it was probably also a symbol of like one of their most powerful and revered goddesses.
Thoth.
Oh, it was Thoth.
Thoth.
Thoth. Isn't that like the god of death? Or am I thinking of
That's-
Than?
Thinking about
Okay.
Thanos?
I think I might have actually been. You know what? My etymology is a little bit rusty, so that's on me.
I think Thoth, I think, is involved in the death thing. I think he was involved with like the weighing of the heart part of that whole thing, which had to be lighter
'cause that
than the
was-
feather.
In the beginning, it was Mayat, and then it was Anubis. I just like last night went on a weird Egyptian religious mythology kick and watched
dang,
probably
alright.
2 hours of the videos about it, and I'm
Oh,
really
shoot.
mad that I don't know who Thoth is.
According to Britannica.com, Thoth is the god of the moon, of reckoning, of learning, and of writing.
Cool.
Fascinating.
Held to be the inventor of writing, the creator of languages.
So
Nice.
feather,
Feather.
quill.
It's all coming around.
You know, anyway, let's move
Nothing
on.
about death, though.
Nothing about
All right, maybe I'm wrong.
unless you think of the extinguishing of writing as the death of thoughts,
Whoa.
forever lost to time.
But isn't it preserving thoughts?
That's true.
If the writing is lost,
Oh, okay.
you know what I mean. That's what I'm. Anyway,
Ooh,
I'm reading a book right now about the Library of Alexandria, so
dang. Okay.
we got way off topic here. I am very sorry to editing Nicole for this.
Ibises.
Ibises. Yeah, we're going to be looking at a grassland ibis. So, Nicole,
What? I'm scared.
describe an ibis.
Alan had to do this the first time.
I know. It is your responsibility right now to come up with the magic words.
I know. I'm trying to remember his magic words so I can cheat. Why think of your own words when you can just cheat? Like, come on.
fair.
Something about like a down curved bill, and it's really long, and they're like skinny. They got big long legs. They're not very elegant, if I'm being honest.
You know, I've actually had
That's fair. No, they're a
similar
goofy
thoughts.
bird. They're a
yeah.
goofy bird. Yeah.
They look pretty funny. I think the first time I saw an ibis up close, like a dead like specimen ibis, I was kind of shocked at how naked its face is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
They got big old bald patches. I don't know, but I've always thought they were pretty elegant until I was exposed to negative propaganda out of Australia about the ibis.
One piece of propaganda in particular.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like, you know, it's probably just tapping into a full culture of
Yeah.
people who really don't like ibises for
sure.
potentially valid reasons. But this ibis is all of the things Nicole said: long-legged, ugly in that beautiful ibis sort of way, but also very distinctive. It's not the only ibis where it lives, which is in South America. It is called the buff-necked ibis, and Allan,
Yes.
please consult the notes of the picture of the ibis I sent you
Okay. I will consult.
like 2 days ago.
I'm on it. It was actually yesterday.
No, there's no way.
God.
Yeah.
That was not yesterday.
Yep. It sure was.
Wow.
Yeah. No, this is a good bird.
Okay. Any other thoughts on its appearance for this audio medium that we are currently engaging in?
Yes. Okay. So I'll paint you a word picture. It is, as we said, goofy, long-legged, long-necked. It is kind of, gosh, it's hard to say, like, describe exactly what bird it resembles, but it does have an enormous, like, downward pointing or decurved bill. And then it's got like this cool little, I don't know, it's got like a little hairdo. It's got like a little slicked back like patch of like kind of rusty feathers on its head.
Yeah, although I would point out to our listeners, it's not like, you know, display feathers. It's just a pattern of color he's describing. He doesn't have like an actual cool hairdo.
No, for sure. I think, okay, so I think when we first talked about this bird, you had mentioned it has a different common name in Brazil, which is the caraca?
Curicaca.
Curicaca. Okay. And that is, what does that mean? We looked it up.
Gold rock.
Okay. Which I don't know that I'm getting that from this bird.
Okay, but look at its head. So like
Its head, yes,
most
maybe.
noteworthy thing I think about this bird is that it's got like a very buffy neck, which is what it's named for
sure.
Its common English name. But it's really light, which is noticeable from a distance. Honestly, bird nerds out there, it kind of reminds me of like a fulvous whistling duck. Or a plumed whistling duck with its like pink legs and its gray wings and stuff. But yeah, because of that light neck, it is really noticeable from a distance. And like Allan mentioned, where it lives, at least in the Brazilian part of its range, it has another name, the curicaca. And it does live in savanna, ranchland, and open forests of a lot of countries in South America, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Paraguay, Argentina, and Uruguay. So it's basically across that entire range, seen poking through the various llanos and campos of those regions. It is a bold bird. It is a beloved bird. Farmers love them. It's the curicaca. AKA the buff-necked ibis. It has other colloquial names too, but they're all just like variations on buff-necked ibis, so they're not really like fun.
It's very interesting to hear that this is such a beloved bird.
Yeah.
Like, just because, I don't know, in a lot of places where people live next to, say, large, noisy colony nesting birds, they're not super thrilled about them.
Yeah, I've had conversations with poor citizens of Wichita, Kansas here who are rightfully outraged at the mess of colony nesting birds in their neighborhoods and stuff. So it is interesting. Yes.
I love when like people hate like the herons and egrets, and legally you can't cut down the trees when they're there, but as soon as they leave they just clear cut that whole place and they're like but then they just nest somewhere else. So
yeah, somebody else's problem. Nature. The buff-necked ibis is nobody's problem. Asterisk on that. It is loved by everyone universally, and that is not an exaggeration. Not a single person asterisk dislikes these birds. In fact, it is so beloved. I have a beautiful poem. Written by Eulalia Martirano Camargo about the buff-necked ibis. It is written in Portuguese, and I Google translated it to English, which means it lost all sense of poeticness. It is, I'm sure, much more beautiful sounding in its native Portuguese, so I'm so sorry, Eulalia, for this travesty that's about to happen, but I still think it gets the spirit of the poem across, and it made me giggle. It still makes me giggle. So we're going to read a poem about the curicaca.
Beautiful.
In Google Translated English. Racket makes curicaca in the morning. Your happy singing, wake up everyone. Strange bird, exotic bird, but nice. It's curicaca. Bird walking, leave at dawn. Only return at dusk, very excited. I don't know if the pine would be funny without the curicaca.
Oh.
Sing, curicaca, sing. I want to wake up every morning with your singing. So obviously everybody wants to know at this point what the beautiful singing of the curicaca sounds like.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, so here is a recording of its beautiful song.
Yep. That's beautiful.
Oh, it's so good.
It is distinct.
Yeah.
That's the nicest thing you can say about it.
I mean,
it is distinct.
Well, I mean, like even the person that just, I mean, you know, Eulalia, who wrote this beautiful poem, you know, extolling the virtues of the Curicaca, still said it makes a racket.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you know.
Oh, yeah, no. They call the singing happy and funny, and they're like, you leave at dawn and you return at dusk, and you're very excited when you return at dusk, and you're still singing, and it makes me happy. So anyway, if you hadn't guessed, the name Curicaca is onomatopoeic. It's one of those names that's kind of describing the sound the bird makes. So it's kind of going Curicaca, Curicaca, like whatever. So that's, you know, where that name comes from. And according to Wiki Aves, which is basically the Brazilian e-bird, it is a song composed of loud screams. That's it. That's the only description.
Yeah.
And this bird is also in the Pantanal referred to as alarm clock.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Love me a bird that screams. It's just like that's...
Honestly, that's the energy that I want to wake up with every morning.
Exactly.
Oh man. Yeah, so absolutely delightful. So kind of like the poem alluded to, the buff-necked ibis has a little bit of a routine during its day. It overall is pretty sedentary. It doesn't migrate or anything, so it kind of has like its home range for the most part. I mean, everything moves around a little bit. Like if your tree gets cut down, you're going to find somewhere else to live. Or if there's just too many birds around, you're going to go somewhere else. But they don't really migrate. And everywhere that we have at one time thought they were migratory or vagrant or something, we just hadn't seen the nests yet. And so they were revealed to be just staying in the region after all. I
just hiccuped.
You leaned forward with such poise that I thought for sure you had something cool to say.
No.
Okay.
I'm just thinking about poop again because Curicaca.
I'm so sorry. It's an onomatopoeia.
Sorry.
Okay.
I also keep thinking about the Cagaros from the Azores, the shearwaters.
The Cagaros? What kind of bird is that?
It's a Corey's shearwater, but bird names for birds. And I love them. And they make dumb, like, laughing noises. I love them so much.
Also like birds that laugh.
Yes.
I also like birds that laugh. Any bird that's just like really out there, just acting like an idiot, being loud, obnoxious. I kind of love it, honestly. So during the day, they have like a little bit of a routine. So they are, like Allan alluded to, colony nesters. They also roost together in groups, like larger groups, and they'll have a roosting spot. They'll wake up in the morning, wake everybody else up too, with their loud screaming, and then eventually take off, leave whatever their roost is, whether it is a lone tree out in a savanna, whether it's an electric pole, whether it's a forest or like some other habitat. Every day they will get up from that place and fly out into the open landscape that surrounds them and disperse to be active all day. And then eventually at night, they all slowly begin to return, trickling in, kind of like, I guess, crows or something like that would be a good analogy for that sort of like roosting behavior. That's something people would see a lot like around here, except way fewer of them and not nearly as small. So yeah, they would fly back into their roost and get ready for bed by also screaming. So, you know, really you can just base your entire day on this bird if you're on like a farm out in the Cerrado or something.
Very cool.
Which is delightful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about their ecology, which is what I think is the fun part. So these guys do live alongside a lot of other ibises in South America, which are like pretty standard ibises. Not gonna lie, didn't do a ton of research on them.
So how do you know they're standard?
Well, because when they were in other studies that I did read, like this Venezuelan study in the 90s, that was like a study of all ibises in Venezuela. They compared them all, and it's like, whoa, all these other ibises are doing ibisy things, and what is happening with the buff-necked ibis? Compared to the other ibises, they tend to forage in dry land furthest from water, whereas everybody else, at the very least, will choose soils that are wet if they're leaving water at all. More often, they're hanging out in flooded meadows and places like that, or foraging along water. So that is a strange thing for an ibis.
For sure, yeah. So they not only, I mean, they preferentially look for really dry places. Like they're like water averse. Like they're just not a fan of. That's interesting.
No, yeah, they just like straight up don't hang out in those locations. In fact, in that Venezuelan study, the buff-necked ibis didn't even use the wet meadows that other ibises regularly use, even in the absence of other species. So it's not even just that like they're trying to avoid places with lots of other ibises, because even when there's no competition, they're still like, screw that wet meadow. I'd rather be out in this like stubbly burnt field instead.
Ooh,
or like walking through these tall grasses and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, so preferentially dry land. They also like feasting in burned stubbly fields. That was not just an offhand reference. That is a thing that they like. Even to the point where in this study, they kind of wondered if their number estimations for populations was off, because when they were surveying for ibises, they were not checking burnt up fields with stubbly stubble in them, you know? Like that's just not where they would expect to find them, so they weren't looking for those habitats.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Who doesn't like a nice burnt field, though?
Oh, crispy.
Smells good.
It does smell good.
Smells good.
And plenty.
Fun to walk on.
Yes.
Fun
Crunch,
to
crunch.
walk on. Plenty of birds love burnt fields. So, not surprising to us grassland groupies. They also tend to feed in smaller flocks, which is different from other ibises too. So, they will be in single species flocks. I guess not surprising if you're the only ibises that like the type of habitat you're in. But they might even just be in their family groups, hanging out, foraging for food. They also appear to be active at literally all hours of the day, which is unusual for most birds. I feel like all birders can relate to this, and especially people who do science. There is a certain window of hours where you want to go out to find birds. And after that, most self-respecting birds are taking a nap, except for maybe brown thrashers and buff-necked ibises.
Right.
Yes.
The dawn chorus.
The dawn chorus, indeed.
Yeah.
But these guys are out all day. That's just what they do. Also, they aren't very aggressive with each other, which I think is adorable. They are friendly, happy birds. Compare with other species where they wrote, like in this study, very detailed descriptions of the types of squabbles they would get into, both with their own species and with other species in these mixed flocks. So, like, ibises can be total jerks. Not all of them, but some of them are. Buff-necked ibises, not in the jerk category.
Aw.
I know.
How nice.
It's great. And as far as when they are out foraging, we keep referencing their long curvy beak. They use that to poke in the ground and catch bugs.
Nice.
It's a good use for it.
It's a good use for it. Here is a nice little tiny quote from this study that also described one of my favorite things about them. Buff-necked ibises had, by far, the highest stepping and lowest probing rates of any species.
Highest stepping, lowest probing.
Correct.
So they're like a visual predator.
Totally. That's
so
a
they're like stalking high steppies.
High steppies.
And then it's like using the peepers to lock on to the most tastiest bugs possible.
Now that you mention that, it does make their hunting sound a lot more deliberate than maybe some other birds. Like they're not having to probe as much because they're going after whatever they're going after.
Yeah. Versus like sandpipers are just like like in a line, like just constant.
Poke, 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 poke. A lot of them are like feeling with their beaks too, but maybe they're more visual.
Thing. Yeah.
Also, can we just like take a moment to appreciate? They have like an entire table of analyzing the stepping and probing rates of various ibis species. So like somebody's job for a period of time was to quantify the stepping and the probing of various ibises.
Nice.
Wow.
I love going into like, really specific studies, like that grasshopper one where they like put like 3 grasshoppers in like a little enclosure and like detailed for 8 hours a day, saw what they ate. Like, what a ridiculous study. But like, that's so helpful. Like, that's such good information. But like, I never thought about sitting in a field for 8 hours to watch grasshoppers.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if I have the attention span for that.
That's
yeah. Well, there was like 4 or 5 people at each cage, you know, just in case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Insane.
The quote goes on and describes the probing behavior as follows. Probing behavior in this species consisted of shallow probes and pecks directed at the surface of the hard, dry substrate. So again, they're finding mostly insects, possibly vertebrate prey and other such things to eat, and deliberately just kind of, I almost said scraping it off the ground, which is not at all what probing is. But you know what I mean.
Right.
Plucking.
There you go.
Plucking it delicately with their giant ugly beaks. I love them. So that is the daily routine of the ibis. Just doing that all day with a few of your buddies or your siblings or whatever.
Very nice.
Do they have to be active all day because they're so bad at finding food?
Well, hold on a second. Whoa. What do you mean bad at finding food? What made you come to that conclusion?
I mean, they're high stepping it through the prairie and like they don't probe very much. So if you're not probing very much, you're not finding a lot of food. And maybe since they are having to look through the grass, I feel like that would make it harder to find food.
Alternative theory.
They've picked a difficult habitat. So they have to do it all day.
Alternative theory. They're expending less energy by probing less and making deliberate little high steps. And what?
Have you ever high stepped through a grassland? It's exhausting.
That's a very good point.
That's a good point.
Yeah, like if you've done any field work in a tall grass situation, it is exhausting to trudge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Through those fields.
You have amazing legs after the summer.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Well, perhaps it's still valid to say that they're not expending as much energy.
Well, you made it sound like they kind of seem to aggregate towards like pretty well disturbed. Like, are they not only in burned places, but also probably like crop fields and maybe pastures as well? Like, it seems like they do pretty well with stuff that's kind of not, maybe not like, you know, super high, tall grasses, but like, you know, stuff that's already been kind of mowed down a little bit.
Sure. Like. Well, and like these savannas in South America, savannas and other forms of grasslands aren't necessarily like, you know, tall grass prairie or even as tall as mixed grass, although I would say mixed grass is probably pretty accurate for at least part of the range these birds are living in. So, I guess it depends. I wonder how tall they are. How long are their legs compared to other ibises? We're getting into some weird nitty-gritty details now, but I kind of need to know. Maybe not fully relevant, but I mean, it's like, okay, never mind.
What? We can always cut it.
Yeah, we can always cut it.
Well, okay. I'm trying to think of other birds that I know hang out in. Okay, well, here's the thing. Like prairie chickens.
Yeah.
They have to jump because they're so short.
Nicole is losing her mind thinking about this. Okay.
It's so cute.
I mean, okay, anyway.
Okay, well, all right. So, like, wait, what are we trying to settle here?
I don't remember anymore.
We're trying to settle if they're bad at hunting? No.
That's what Nicole was saying. I think
hypothesis.
that's pure bullshit.
It's a hypothesis.
I mean,
It's not
okay, well,
bullshit.
like, what
Maybe they
is-
just like being awake.
Usually when animals are active for a long period of time, it's because they're eating that whole time.
Well, why are brown thrashers singing all day?
Because
They can. Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe buff-necked ibises are just doing it because they can. Okay. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's all there is to it. Okay.
Totally. Maybe.
Also, there's not a lot of research in English on the buff-necked ibis. There were several papers in Portuguese that I could not translate, even with Google Translate.
Dang.
I know. Very unfortunate.
For anyone wondering, buff-necked ibises are 30 inches.
In what direction?
I don't know. That's just
Wingspan?
length. I don't know if that's like head to tail or head to
It said length.
It said length, yeah.
So length is usually tip of beak to tip of tail.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It's 30 inches, so that's
75
2.5 feet.
centimeters. Yes. 2.5 feet,
That's a good
30
sized bird.
inches,
Okay.
75 centimeters.
I mean, it's an ibis. It's not small.
That's like, what is that? That's what, green heron sized? Maybe
No,
large.
bigger than a green heron.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah, green herons are itty bitty babies. No.
What does 2.5 feet look like?
Not that much.
That's about 2.5 feet.
That's probably 2.5 feet.
Nobody can see this.
You know what? Yeah, we're doing a disservice to the medium here.
It's fine. It's fine.
Oh my goodness. Getting back onto a track at all here, with the ecology of these birds, I think a lot of what I've described so far isn't like that dissimilar from other shorebirds that live in grasslands and use grasslands, except for the fact that they don't necessarily spend every moment of their life in a grassland habitat. They might be roosting in other habitats, and they might be nesting in other habitats too. So I think it is good to note here, like, some distinctions. I think my tendency is always to compare grassland shorebirds to the upland sandpiper.
Sure.
One of the best birds
Oh, yeah.
of North America. Just a little, they have one of the best songs. It is an actual beautiful song. It's like getting catcalled from the sky. It's so good. The only kind of catcalling that I want.
Okay.
Actively.
Whoa. The first time I ever heard an upland sandpiper was with Tiff. We were out stargazing, and we just heard, and we're like, what is happening? And it took me like a few months to figure out what it was, because I was like, that is not a bird. I thought it was like a piece of machinery somewhere, because we were like in like, near a farmer's field. Like, we weren't in the field, but like we were near a farmer's field, and like just heard this weird noise, and I was like, all right.
The fact that they're like, I mean, you'd still call them a grassland specialist, though.
Oh, absolutely. Because
it's
they
just-
depend on it.
Right, absolutely. 'Cause even though, I mean, and you guys talk a lot about this on the podcast, like, just because we're talking about grasslands doesn't mean like the structure is exactly like a North American prairie, right? They're like, they'll use trees, and like there's all sorts of other stuff, other elements that they're
And the trees are a part of a lot of the habitats that they're living in. And I think it's also really cool to, especially as people who have picked a specific biome that we think is the best, I think it's really good to remember how interconnected everything is, and how, even grassland specialists that like depend on that habitat and need that habitat will also be using other habitats during either different parts of their life cycle or just in their daily routine. And that, for real conservation to happen, it's important to look at the broad landscape. And, if you're generally conserving only grasslands in those stretches and letting everything get deforested, that's also not great for grassland species.
For sure.
Yeah. So for the buff-necked ibis, that is certainly true. Their nesting, like Allan mentioned, is colonial, and they will nest in trees or on cliffs is the most common places they will go. And what I thought was kind of fun / weird was that it seems very rare or impossible for an ibis colony to set up somewhere where there aren't also predators setting up that do prey on them.
Right.
There was one specific study that was looking at the association of raptors nesting with these colonies, and not only found that there was a strong association, but was trying to figure out why that was. And as you might suspect, the main reason that chicks don't make it is just because of predators plucking them up and munching on them, which, I mean, typical colony bird life.
For sure.
In Argentina is where this raptor study was conducted. Observers found so many different species nesting with or beside these ibis colonies. They found multiple hawk species, 2 different species of caracaras, which are one of like the coolest like evolutionary offshoots I think I've ever it's like
it's a good bird.
A falcon, but like make it a vulture. Yeah. So cool. Peregrine falcons, Cinereus harrier, and buzzard eagles all nesting with the ibis colonies. And even though most of those species fed on the ibis chicks, what they thought was interesting was that the nesting success was very similar at sites where there weren't raptors, even though those were pretty rare. Mm-hmm. So basically, even though there were raptors there eating the babies were still being eaten when there weren't raptors.
Mm-hmm.
Still, wait.
Just by different predators?
Just by other predators, or there was just chick mortality? Like, they're just dying?
I guess they looked at chick mortality generally. Mm-hmm. The study did use a lot of, like, observation data where they were specifically, like, watching the depredations occur. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they were able to track, like, specific species preying on them and stuff. But... yeah, it's mostly predators, regardless of whether they're raptors or not. So
sure.
Interesting.
Because that is something that, like, I've heard people complain about with, like, heron nests or, like, colony nesting and stuff. Like, there's just, like, dead babies on the ground. Like, they're not getting, like, taken and eaten. Like, there's just dead babies on the ground.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
It depends on the species. So some species have a lot of, like, sibling rivalries that turn deadly. So that can be a factor. If the babies aren't doing so hot, like the parents might like pick one and be like, all right, see ya, junior. Yeah. Sometimes it's just really clumsy babies that are climbing around the nests. Like some colony nesting birds, mm-hmm. the chicks don't move around very much. Others, they will climb around and then just fall off and get eaten by a gator or something.
For sure.
And I guess that probably happens with other species. It's just more obvious when it's a giant colony.
Exactly.
It's concentrated.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And even then, it's like plenty of people notice like naked little pink baby passerine birds falling out of their nests and stuff.
Yeah. Happens. It just happens.
Storms, whatever.
This last spring, there were so many dead babies everywhere.
Oh.
It was just really windy.
It was such a haunted look came over Nicole's face when she said that.
What a fun out-of-context quote.
I was working with the public at the time, and everybody would point every single one of them out to me. And I'm like, okay, I guess I have to go pick up this dead baby bird. And it would be like 3-4 dead baby birds a day. Like, it was insane. It was so many.
Well, like, storms are a huge part of that for our area, too.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, these... Are ibis chicks pretty precocial? Like when they're, or are they more there? So they're like, they don't take a long time to get like active, which I guess might also kind of like, put them at risk for like an aerial predator. Because if they're like, whoop, 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 I'm going to go, explore over here and then, and they're gone, So like.
What a great.
I mean,
it's like a movie in my head.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially like, it's a really fun thing with like, colony nesting birds in general is that they usually have like some kind of like group defense like tactic. Mm-hmm. Do ibises do anything as a group nester? Like do they as a colony nester? Like if there's a predator in the area, do they like do they go after it or do they like what do they do?
What a great question.
Do they just all the parents fly away and they're like, safety in numbers, good luck, hopefully they don't get my baby?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
But there's all sorts of things. Like do they try to lead them away from the nests? Do they do they just like go straight for the throat? Like I mean they're like there's a lot of birds that'll do that, like
I mean they're not especially aggressive birds. I guess I never encountered nest defenses from them, and it seemed to me that it was pretty easy for predators to just go when there weren't parents around.
If they're gone all day.
Yeah, well, And I don't know that they're necessarily gone all day, but they're certainly not like staying on the nest all the time like some birds would do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, unattended nestlings. That's such an interesting question though, because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they don't have a defense.
Yeah. If I were a predator, I'd just wait till mom and dad were gone.
Well, that's a way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a way to do it.
Also, I wonder if there are other ibis defenses. What?
Real quick.
Yeah.
Let's define what the heck precocial is.
Allan, it's all you.
Okay, so precocial, there's a spectrum in terms of like bird young when they're hatched. Mm-hmm. Do they need a lot of help from mom and dad before they're ready to leave the nest, or are they like, screw you, mom and dad, I'm leaving, like I'm ready to go? And like, so altricial is what they call the birds that need a lot of help, and that's what you think of like a naked featherless baby bird that hasn't opened its eyes yet, that needs a lot of help from mom and dad. The typically birds that are born in like a more vulnerable position, like most shorebirds, are more precocial. You can kind of think like precocious, right? Like they act old for their age, so they're like ready, they're like ready to go. And yeah, like there's a lot of birds that leave the nest within like a few hours maybe of being hatched, which is not usually what we think of with a baby bird, but
yeah. And usually the precocial birds are cooking in the egg way longer than the altricial ones. So they'll spend more time in like an egg form, and then by the time they pop out, it's like, all right, hurry up and sprout wings.
Yes, no time to waste.
Yeah. So it's a trade-off.
Trade-off.
Wow. So in my brief foray, I'm not easily finding anything on ibis generally defending their nests. So
well, they might not. Like there are some birds that don't really they just don't. They're just kind of like, well, I'm gonna walk over here. Maybe I'll make a noise. But yeah, I guess just please leave me alone.
Yeah, I would think for a bird as big as an ibis, probably their main defense is just the size of that bird and being intimidating and not being able to be removed from the nest. And like, I don't think that they're a bird that just like would run away from a predator unless it was like the kind of predator that could literally eat them. Like I imagine the eagles could eat them. But as far as defending the nests.
Because I guess if this is a
defense in numbers, and size.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a 2.5 foot long bird.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, like, the raptors aren't really going after the adults, right? They're pretty much going after just the chicks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
For sure.
I guess they probably don't,
Most other
defend the chicks by sitting on them. That's probably the way they do
it.
Yes.
Speaking of predators, though, one of... oh, boy. Oh, sorry. I should end the raptor discussion by at least pointing out that the researchers in that study speculated that the association between raptors and ibis colonies had more to do with the fact that it's just very hard to find a place in those regions where there aren't raptors nesting, and less to do with like them necessarily taking advantage of the ibises.
Right.
Which makes sense, I guess, or they would just clean the ibis colony out, right? But yeah, plenty of other animals prey on them. And I got a huge kick out of finding our old friend the Toko toucan in this research. So let me tell you about these murderers. We did a whole episode on these guys. So I really love tarnishing the spotless reputations of beloved animals.
Yeah.
As much as I love polishing the tarnished reputation of hated animals. There was a really detailed account from 2017, which was the first documented recorded observation of Toko toucans sneaking into ibis colonies and murdering unattended babies to consume their baby flesh. Not
sorry. Go ahead.
So many dead babies. I sent you guys like the entire figure of images, which
yes.
I mean, it's one thing to hear about it, but then to see these toucans in the act, like these beautiful, glossy, tuxedoed, blue-eyed toucans just wringing baby necks. It brings me a weird delight that I probably should think about in detail, but I won't. Maybe that's a moment for self-reflection, but we're not going to go there.
No, I mean, it's well, especially the figure that you gave us is funny because it's like, in the one picture, it's like, it's killing a chick, but then in the next picture, it's like, has its head thrown back with its bill open. It's just like, it looks like it's just cackling with delight at having tasted the blood of the innocent. Like, it looks really, it's a great picture.
Thank you. Yes, it's so good. It's so gnarly too. I'll for sure have this in our show notes, but you can see them like throwing eggs back, like, fruit toss, but like, cooking babies inside the egg. That sounded different than I meant it to. There's one of them literally wringing a baby's neck, which the researchers took some very detailed observations. For example, the toucans would wait until the parents were gone and then like kind of sneak in through there and get in there and just grab the babies by the neck and like shake them until the necks broke. And
it's really brutal, but I mean that's
so brutal.
That's how it goes.
But I think it's maybe it's painting the picture too a little bit, because it's so hard to imagine such a delightful animal being capable of this, but not only to see the pictures, but to like be able to visualize how a bird with such a stupid beak is capable of these things. Like, yeah, okay, that's pretty great.
Oh, it makes sense. I mean, if you've got a beak like that, I mean, yeah, that thing's a weapon. Come on. Like, I mean, pelicans will kill stuff with their beak.
They do?
Oh yeah, they'll like kill a cormorant with like smack it to death with their beak.
You're doing like a beak smacking motion, and I still am having a hard time visualizing this act. I think I need to have evidence of
I'm gonna Google it. You keep going.
Thank you so much. We'll put this in the show notes too for some reason. So they are sitting ducks, sitting ibises, even for things like toucans in their environment. In this particular region, they were nesting in forests, and then the parents would go forage in the surrounding Cerrado around the forested region where they were nesting. So I guess, plenty of time to go in there and murder some babies if you are an enterprising toucan. Poor buff-necked ibises. The poor curicaka. I'm going to pause for evidence of toucans. Or not toucans, pelicans. Before I move on to
I gotta keep looking. Don't hold up on my account. I'm really fascinated to see if there's actually any video of this.
Pelican murdering.
Ooh, the 6 most disturbingly evil birds. Okay, we'll come back.
That is a promising title. You know what's kind of funny about some of those is that like I'll read them and be like, wow, you guys don't even know about these other murderous birds. Like, this is some basic bird stuff.
I know, that's the thing. It's nice because, people probably look at like, I mean, you see a toucan is probably like in every like little rainforest motif thing. Yeah. And it's like, oh, it's just like a precious, like you said, spotless reputation bird. Yeah. But it's like, oh, no. You don't know.
No,
you don't know.
Let me tell you about these. They have a thirst for blood. Blood of the innocents, as Allan said. Okay, now
I'm just looking at pictures of pelicans. All right, let's get back on track. Let's get back on track.
Next. So I know that they are beloved birds culturally. Everybody loves them, including farmers, because they're eating bugs in their fields. Like, what more could you possibly ask for? I did also come across something that I thought was freaking hilarious, and sent me down like one of the weirdest and most specific rabbit holes I've been down. I was confronted with a paper exclusively covering how large birds fuck up overhead line structures in Brazil and cause power outages. And even though this title and abstract was very vague and was like, yeah, birds that are large, like, just large birds, they do things that are bad. Every figure, every paragraph of this article pointed a finger directly at the buff-necked ibis. There was no mincing words in the text. It was fully, no. The curicaka is the problem.
So the headline was birds.
Large birds.
The evidence said this bird, though.
This specific bird, yeah.
Like birds, but actually this one bird.
Here, let me read you figure 1 from this study. Ibis, Thuristicus caudatus, also known as the curicaca in Brazil, is the main responsible for the problem. And they had to go into excruciating detail about this bird because it is the problem. So what is the problem, you're wondering? Basically, it's causing power outages through what is called flashover events, which is like basically like a lightning bolt sort of situation happening on the tower that's not supposed to happen, and I don't know, power company stuff, but it knocks out the power. So I could not figure out what the birds were doing in order to cause this problem. These two people have already been through this with me, so I'm just going to talk to you, the audience. These two don't exist for me right now. It's just you and me, listener. They said that the problem was bird streamers. What is a bird streamer? My first thought was, it's poop. It's obviously poop. But then several figures of the study were like, we had detailed analyses done of the poop, and the poop is not the problem. It is not causing this. It's not even degrading because of the climate of where we live. It's not causing degradation in our insulators. It's not the issue. And so I was like, okay, well then what is a bird streamer? And this paper never defined what a bird streamer was. And I was so confused. What is the problem? So, okay, I'm going to let you guys speak. I'm so sorry for shutting you off there. Help us, like, what were your thought processes? Because, like, one of my thoughts was, like, I don't know, maybe they're dropping feathers or something and that's causing a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I thought, I thought, like, well, okay, so I went to, like, my brain went to poop first, but I couldn't figure out how that would do anything.
Right.
And then I was like, well, okay, maybe it had, because they're, like, they hang out in grasslands, maybe they're very kind of dusty, and maybe they're just bringing a lot of dust with them, and that's creating a lot of, like, that's conductive. Maybe that's creating, like, a charge because they're just shaking off all this dust. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I was very wrong.
Yeah.
I was so wrong.
I also definitely went poop first, and I was like, maybe they're like being dumb and like trying to sun themselves and like accidentally touch like two different wires, and, like
vulture,
and like arc over,
Zap,
and like
yeah.
I don't know.
That is such, but I had a similar thought at some point, but then I noticed, like, specifically that they were trying to piece together, like, forensically what was happening and whether the bird streamers, quote unquote, were in fact the problem. And they never mentioned finding bird corpses.
Yeah.
They never mentioned, like, they would see poop on some insulators, but again, they sent that to the lab and, like, determined it wasn't the cause of the problem and stuff. So let me settle it once and for all. A bird streamer is apparently a well-known phenomenon for power company people. Here's the thing about birds. They fly.
Yes.
What is everything about a bird designed to do? Be lightweight for flight. So naturally, when a bird is about to take flight, they forcefully eject the contents of their bowels. Mm-hmm. Now, I know what you're thinking. I thought poop was off the table. I did too. This is why it was such a confusing issue for me. But bird streamers are a very specific poop phenomenon.
Yeah.
So, they release up to 60 cubic centimeters of excrement mixed with conductive urine at one time, and it comes out, and I quote, at quite a pressure.
Quite a pressure.
This creates a conductive path that bridges the air gap between different tower structures and basically causes this poop, which, may I point out, can attain lengths of up to 2 meters and move at speeds of 2 to 5 meters per second.
2 to 5 meters. That's fast.
That is a forceful ejection of a lot of poop and urine.
Yes.
And if you're trying to, like, diagram this in your head. Like 60 centimeters is about the size, like the length of the bird's body.
Cubic centimeters, though.
Cubic centimeters. But that's volume.
That's volume.
I thought you were saying like a length. Like that was the length of the stream.
So that's like the volume of it. The length is up to 2 meters long.
Oh, that's so much. That's so huge. That's crazy. Okay.
So, like, this is a general phenomenon made worse by large birds like the curicaca, which is so prevalent, especially in the Cerrado of Brazil. Power lines are such a good roosting structure for these birds that when they take off and forcefully eject all this excrement right over a vulnerable part of the tower, basically, it just ignites the poop.
Fascinating.
It causes a flashover event. After discharge, the bird excrement literally explodes and flies apart at high speed in the form of powder, such that nothing visible remains.
Whoa.
Which is why there's no evidence left of this crime.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So again, to reiterate, them just pooping on the tower structure doesn't do anything. But when their poop is forcefully ejected out of their body and is instantly vaporized by a lightning bolt, it will take out the power of significant portions of the surrounding area. And many people working for these power companies shake their fists at the curicaca in the sky. Amazing.
But even still, you say it's a beloved bird.
Oh, yeah.
Well, remember the asterisks from earlier?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, this is the only negative. And it's
sure.
not even like, that's not specifically a them problem. It's technically a general large bird problem. It's just that in this particular region,
it's a them.
It's a them problem. Yeah, they are the problem. But the good news is, you know, people like these birds. People also like having power. So.
Yeah, it's a beautiful bird. It just occasionally shits so hard it knocks your power out.
It's a big bird. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to mitigate once you figure out that is indeed the cause of the flashover. You analyze the crime scene and realize there's nothing else that could have happened here except these birds. And so then you just put like nice little cones over the very vulnerable parts of the tower that cannot stand to have 2 meter long strings of excrement next to them, creating nice conductive paths for lightning to strike, basically. It's easy to handle once you diagnose the issue.
Yeah.
And once again, I just want to point out that somebody's job was to do a thorough laboratory analysis on the feces of these birds
obviously.
An insulator, and I think that's hilarious.
You got volume, you got length, you got speed, you got all the variables accounted for there. That's amazing.
Yep. We even have a beautiful figure, which I will link to in our show notes, where they have simulated bird excrement creating a streamer where you can indeed see the incendiary event occur. So yeah, just so good. So good. These birds just look so dumb. I love them so much. So I'm just looking at them sitting on a power line, like they're all looking at the spikes, like, man, I wish I could sit there. Oh, problematic and yet so beloved. Okay, so finally we are at the last little piece of the puzzle here for these birds, at least the piece of the stuff that I picked out to tell you guys about. Which is normally a very scary topic for me because it has to do with like the conservation of the species, which can be such a horrible note to end on because everything kind of sucks a lot of the time for conservation. But not for the buff-necked ibis. Yay, they are considered of least concern. And in fact, a lot of that has to do with the happy circumstance, for them at least, that ecologically, a lot of the destructive ecological practices that are happening in the South American countries where they live are actually creating more habitat types that they like to use.
Right.
So that's just, help me, words.
It's a
side effect,
unintended
benefit.
Yeah. But yeah. Well, it's what are you trying to say?
What am I trying to
I know what you're trying to say, but I can't think of it either.
Yeah. It is It is not. Well, let me give you some more information. Maybe that'll help us. There are a couple of subspecies of this bird. I'm not really personally interested in subspecies as much unless, I mean, it's just like interesting notes about like the evolutionary lineage of certain populations that are separated by geographic barriers or something. But neither of them are, in any danger. It's generally common throughout its range. There are specific regions, though, where there is some really significant deforestation events happening and destruction of habitats. In the Chaco region of Paraguay, which is being rapidly deforested right now, it is actually really common, in fact, the most common in those areas where the forest has been cleared for development of cattle ranching. So I think that's a good illustration of why this species is doing well right now. A lot of the development of land that's occurring in countries like Brazil and I guess Paraguay has to do with, creating agricultural areas. So whether it's clearing Cerrado for soybean farms or deforesting certain areas in order to ranch cattle, those changes to the habitats are just happening to benefit this animal that is able to succeed in those places. And I think that's because, number one, they are nesting in places that are not going to be super developed. I think people have a tendency to leave at least,
pieces.
Yeah, like pieces of trees around, or at least, enough of a tree for them to have like a nesting site or something. People aren't bulldozing cliffs or something if that's where their colony nest is occurring. Right. And their real dependency on the grassland is for forage and for finding food, and their preferences for, where they're spending their daily routines. And so whether you're clearing savanna to create soybean fields or clearing forest to create cattle, you are creating an environment where they can move in and find insects to feed on, even if it's purely soybean fields, which is not providing any other ecological benefit to species. Right. They can still forage in that area. In the case of deforestation for cattle ranching, it's literally creating their ideal habitat, and the cattle are also increasing the number of insects available. So that is a direct benefit to this bird. And I think that's, another, again, interesting example of how interconnected things are, and how, I guess, tugging on one thread somewhere is by happenstance going to affect something somewhere in a positive way, just by, pure probability, I guess. And I'm not saying that it's a great thing that it's being deforested, but I will say that if you're somebody who loves this bird, then, it's fortunate that this bird isn't currently being negatively impacted by what's occurring in its habitat range. And in fact is seen as a benefit, because if it is prowling soybean fields looking for insects, they are so welcomed to do that, because it is providing an ecological and economic benefit there for the people that are using that land in that way. Right.
Their utility is, enough that they wouldn't be seen as a nuisance.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think that this bird in particular has kind of a warm cultural place for a lot of people that share the land with these birds. They're so charismatic. They're so noticeable, whether it's because of their large stature and their very obvious buffy head, or just their screaming. They're making themselves known, and they're just kind of a part of the backdrop of what makes that place home for a lot of people. Yeah. And it's also doing things that are only benefiting people, and it's not really getting in the way unless you work for power companies. But, that's avoidable. So, it's looking good right now for this bird. And I think that that's really cool. And I don't say that in a way to take away from the negative ecological impacts that are happening for other species. But I guess it is refreshing for me sometimes to find species that aren't just, wilting under our thumb, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, yeah, you're right. Like sometimes there is just that, interesting silver lining to it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it seems to happen a lot for grassland specialists because, I mean, there's some, there are some grassland specialists that, once grasslands are,
Eliminated.
I was gonna say desecrated, but I'm like,
yeah,
that sounds so. But yeah, once the grasslands deteriorate, like they're in serious trouble. But there are others who like seem to thrive on that aspect of like the constant disturbance that grasslands exist in, and this definitely seems to be one of those birds. Like they like the burned fields, they like the short fields, they like the crop fields. They seem to they roost in groups. They really, as long as there's just a couple trees standing, I bet they're probably fine.
Yeah.
Like if there's like a tree line or a wind belt or something like that. So yeah, I mean, it's just like, hey, this is great for them. It's like, yeah. I mean, yeah, I feel like you've talked about a few species like that. Yeah, where it's just like, hey, cool, the grasslands are being destroyed, but this is better.
But they're making it.
This is fine.
Yeah.
So you're right. That's a not totally depressing conservation takeaway.
Yes.
Indeed.
Some species will be fine. They'll keep doing their thing.
Yeah. The resiliency of life, etc., etc.
Yeah. Life finds a way.
Dang it, I wanted to say that.
Indeed. Very good. Well, that's a great note to end on, I think.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on the currycaca that we didn't vomit out already?
You forgot to tell your currycaca story.
Yeah, you did. I was going to mention that.
On a personal note, the currycaca for me was honestly one of those. I had an opportunity to like actually see them in Brazil. My sister-in-law, her family farm is in Brazil in the Cerrado, and one of her family members is a super bird nerd, and so naturally he was my new best friend, and the language barrier was a little rough because he only knew the Brazilian names for the birds, and so we'd try to like look up the scientific names to figure out what was going on. But I have a really distinct memory of being out on the farm with them one night, and I'm just like out looking at birds because what else are you gonna do? And of course Andre was out looking at birds too, and he was like, hey, I bet if you stay right here, the currycacas are going to come back. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, the what? It's like the currycaca. And he's like, I have no idea what they're called in English, but you just wait right here, and then you'll hear them. They'll go currycaca, and then you got to wait, and you'll see them. And I was like, okay. And so he leaves me there, and I sit there, and the sky is getting dark, and before long, some little heads start popping up out of the grass. And then a bird flies overhead, and it is a freaking ibis. And I was like, oh my God, I know what that is. And I was so shocked to see an ibis in like what basically felt like a slightly more hilly version of Kansas with different looking trees on a cattle ranch. And he was like, oh, there they are. There's the currycacas. And it was like such a really cool experience. Like, they did exactly what he said, and I was honestly kind of stunned that it happened exactly the way he said and that they were that predictable. But like right when he said they would, these birds start flying in, and they are huge, and they are ugly, and they are screaming, and it is such a glorious experience. And as the sun went down, I sat there until all the currycacas were in the tree and had started to go quiet, and then I was like, well, good night, I guess. I'll see you later. And it was such a cool experience seeing these birds. And I think for me, like having experiences like that and being with people who are like just so into the same kind of landscape that I'm into, even though we like barely speak the same language and like are from completely different continents, it's so cool, and it was like really touching for me in a way that was really surprising. And so I think that the curry caca for me, it was like a really big turning point for me in like, I don't know, just like realizing like there's cool stuff everywhere. And for some people, it's not that interesting to hang out on a cattle farm, but for some people, it is everything to hang out on a cattle farm, you know, to be on a ranch, to be on a landscape, and to be like living an experience with the other animals that live there, not because you put them there, but because it's their home, you know. And that's like such a powerful experience, and it's so universal. And I really like curry cacas.
That's really nice. I mean, I love that it's like, it's a really distinctive part of, like, because it's like, you know, like you're saying, like he's like, hey, this is about to happen, because it happens every day, because this is like a piece, it's like a part of being here, you know.
Yeah,
it's like, you know, it's like if you were here, you'd hear dick sizzles and stuff, and then you'd like, it'd be weird if you didn't, you know. And yeah, it's nice. It's one of those things.
Or like you'd want to, like, if you wanted somebody to like really experience the prairie, you'd take them out early in the morning to like a prairie chicken lek or something, and like listen for those like booming notes, or, you know, like there's stuff like that happening everywhere, and in some of the commonest, most overlooked, and most derided places. And it's kind of cool that there are so many people out there who see how beautiful that is, and will even write poems about it, even though they're being woken up by it every morning.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's so nice.
Thank you, Rachel. That was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
You're welcome. Just for the sake of balance, murderous toucans.
Okay.
I'm just gonna speak that to the universe.
Toucans exposed. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
And thank you for listening. The Best Biome is produced through our nonprofit Grassland Groupies, dedicated to inspiring the conservation of grasslands. In the show notes, you can find our website, phone number, and social media accounts. Text, call, or tweet your suggestions, fan mail, or hate mail. If you enjoyed the show and want to support us, tell your friends and leave us a review on Podchaser, Apple Podcasts, or even Spotify. Whatever, you know, program or app or whatever you're using to listen to us, take a minute and see if you can give us a review. It really helps us out a lot. We couldn't do this without your support. See you again in 2 weeks.
I once saw 300 seagulls chase a single bald eagle, and it was amazing. That was my favorite nature thing. God. No, it was like a juvenile bald eagle, and I think it made like a horrible mistake. It was like, ooh, this looks like a good place to, you know, buzz over. And then like 300 glaucous gulls were like, no.
Some lessons have to be learned the hard way.
Like,
that eagle was like, never again.
You messed up, buddy. Yeah, please cut that. It has nothing to do with the episode. I just wanted to say it.